so excited for this topic because I feel like it's one of those things that's like such a small thing, but such a big thing that can really, really, really change the game in business. But I think that a lot of us don't necessarily see, or maybe even take the time to do, or maybe don't know the strategy to do it. And so we're going to talk about that today. Hey, Alessia. And that is basically, I'll give you the quick rundown and then we'll talk about like what it is and how to do it. Because I think there is a lot more behind the how to do it than it seems, but it's basically talking about the transformation your clients go through and not just the result. I think that so often when I see people sharing online, they're just sharing results. My client got this result, this result, this result. That's great. There's a time and place to share that. I certainly share client result screenshots too, like all good. But if you're not sharing the actual transformation behind it, you are not making as many sales as you could be making. And so when I say the actual transformation, here's what I mean. Like, I can share the result of like, one of my clients made, whatever, $1.6 million last year. Cool. Amazing result, Or I can share the transformation where one of my clients who came to me at zero made $1.6 million last year after only, 2.5 years of working together. I think that's right. I didn't prepare for this example part. But does that make sense? Like, one just context it so much differently. One is like, oh, it's amazing someone's gotten that result. Cool. But like, if they made 1.3 million the year before and then 1.6 last year, like obviously still a win and still super great to be supporting businesses at that level, but it's totally different than the actual transformation that occurred. Right. And I think that we just forget to include that so often. And like the other thing I want to say is like, if a client comes to you, they don't even have a business yet, and the result you're sharing is like, they got their first client. Well, that's a fucking insane transformation to come to you at zero, no business, no idea, and to walk away with their first client. Like, that's some of the hardest stuff in business. But if all you're sharing is they got their first client without that context behind it, it's a good result. And maybe a lot of your audiences would be excited to get their first client, but it's not quite the same. Does this make sense to everybody? Hey, Elisa. So I'm not saying you have to have these wild, crazy transformations, but the fact that we're not really regularly sharing the transformation is where things get, I think, almost like, I don't know, bland or like less connective with our audience, because we're not actually sharing, here's the journey, or like, here's what this truly looked like. We're just like, and this result, and this result, and this result. And like, depending on where I'm at, those either feel really, really far away from me. So I'm like, oh, you're probably not the right coach for me because that result is so far away from me. Or that result doesn't feel super exciting because I don't know where they started. And so framing that up is so useful. So feel free to share some of that. If you guys have examples of that, I would love to hear that in the chat. If you have questions about this, I would love to hear it, but I want to talk a lot more about how to do this. And like, again, I think there's a lot more behind it that we don't do in this industry. Another piece of this is, are you tying that transformation to your own process, right? Yes, Elisa says this makes so much sense. Also, when we can share the starting point, I feel like the potential client can find themselves in the situation. Exactly. Perfectly said. And are you tying it to your process too? Because I just see the result and maybe I do or don't get super jazzed by that. But then maybe I see the transformation. I'm super jazzed by that. Like, I really resonate with that. I feel like that was a huge jump. That's transformation I want to make. You still haven't sold me yet though. Why? Because I still am not completely connecting that transformation to what you offer or your process. So then when you bring that in, and it's like the whole transformation, the result, and then connecting it back to how you specifically, your process, your business, your container, what you teach is what got them there. Now we're talking big sales, right? Because maybe nobody else is teaching that, or maybe nobody else is teaching that quite like you, or maybe nobody else is teaching that with that same level of transformation conversation, right? And that's when the sales really start to roll in, is when people can see that not only are your clients making these amazing transformations from like a starting point that is maybe very similar to theirs, but it's because of the process you help walk them through. Do you see how that's really, really different and a really big deal? Because I could be excited about your transformation even, but if I'm like, oh, okay, I want a transformation like that, I better go, whatever, hire this other person because I know I need to do better at sales. But like, you totally forgot to sell me on your process to get there. All you did was maybe get me lit up and excited and on fire to have my own transformation like that, but maybe not totally connected to buying from you specifically. So remember that piece too. Like, if there is not a specific process or formula or framework or whatever that you're tying to the transformation, it's going to be harder to have someone see, oh yes, this is why I have to do this process to get this thing I want. Does that make sense? So it's like, for me, the way I do this in my business is I really try to share client transformations. Obviously, again, sometimes I still share just results, but I really believe sharing client transformations is truly what has built my business in so many ways, because most of my clients don't come to me very far along. Like, a lot of my clients come to me early on. Like, the multiple clients I can think of right now that are making 7 figures plus in their business I can think of, I think 90% of them, I'm trying to think, I'm like thinking through front of my head. 90% of them came to me making under 10K, right? Several at 0, right? So of those clients, the fact that most were making well under 10K a month, if not 0, when they started with me, I think is one of the reasons people want to hire me often, or interested in hiring me, is not just because I work with a bunch of 7-figure business owners, but because of the transformation that occurred, because it shows that I can support them through each level. But then, wait for it, when it gets really good is when I'm able to connect it to my process, right? I don't want to miss these comments. Hey, Molly says frameworks are so important for conversions. Exactly. We'll talk about that more. Frameworks are also really easy to share as free content, leaving them hungry to buy how to use the framework and apply it to their situation. Totally. Felicia says this makes so much sense. Without the context of where they started, the current result doesn't have as much meaning and isn't as relatable. It's like when we give the transformation example, clients can insert their own stories into that example. I had a client who just shared in my program that he had his first week of 6 full fee clients, that up until this point, he's only had 2. Exactly. Like, the 6 full fee clients is awesome, but when you context that with like, he's only ever had 2, well, he just tripled. That's incredible, right? Totally agree, Felicia. Jordan said you've inspired me to start asking for feedback results from clients. Now I have information to share because they just weren't sharing with me. And I feel so great about what I'm doing. Oh, I love that, Jordan. I have a lot more I want to say on that too. In terms of like actually asking for that information. Cause like I was saying earlier, I think there's a lot of things that we don't do to make this easier. And that's one of them. So we'll talk about that. Elisa says, what would you say for a new program launch? As I have client wins and transformations for my one-on-one, but now I am promoting my newer group program. Can I transfer those client wins because it was still me? Or how do you go about it? Yeah. So to me, that's where the framework stuff comes in. It's like, if you can tie how the thing you're teaching helps those clients get those results in one-on-one, and then tie it to like what you're teaching in the program, that can be the thread. That's why not only the transformation, but the process or the framework, whatever we want to say, is so important there, because then it helps us tie it to other things. So that's what I would really focus on. You know, it's probably very likely that the results you have from one-on-one came from focusing on certain things, and then you're teaching those things in this program. And when you can say like, hey, these transformations came because we did this framework or we worked on this process, now I'm teaching this process in this new program, that's when it all starts to connect, right? But what I was saying earlier is like, okay, so one of the reasons people want to hire me a lot is because of the huge transformation that a lot of my clients go through, but it's also because I hammer home in my content all the time, mindset, strategy, and execution, and how that's the process I work through with clients. That process works at every level of your business. That's what's helped so many of my clients grow. That's what's helped me grow, blah, 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 right? So what happens is now when people want to hire me, or before when I was doing a lot of sales calls, is people would literally get on the sales call with me saying, well, what I really need is mindset, strategy, and execution. Hello, that's how things get easier, right? Because now they're not just sold on like the transformation I can provide, but the process I use to do it. Nobody else is selling mindset, strategy, and execution because, well, one, because we have that trademarked. But so side note, own your intellectual property, but two, because that's my thing. That's like my personal, belief system and process that I've come up with. And so they want to hire me when they realize that mindset, strategy, and execution is going to get them more of what they want and the transformation they want. So that's why it's really important to tie all those things together, because that's when sales get easy. When someone's getting on the phone with you and they're like, I already know the transformation you've taken a lot of your clients through, and I already know that, mindset, strategy, and execution is what I need, or like insert whatever your thing is there, right? That's when it's like no-brainer sales, because you've already done so much of that upfront work. Where if I was just sharing results a lot, then when someone was getting on the phone with me, I'd have so many barriers to overcome in the sales process. I would have to help them see how, like, yes, those results are possible for someone that's at your starting point. That's a huge objection for a lot of people. How's this going to work for me? How's this possible for me? Is this actually going to work from where I'm at? So I'd have to overcome all of that. And then I'd have to get them bought in on mindset, strategy, and execution. Now I'd have to be like, and here's why mindset, and here's why strategy, and here's how they tie together. Like, there would just be so much work in the sales, in the end of the sales process, like, in the call, in the follow-up, in the conversations to get to conversion, versus if you're doing more of this up front, sharing the full transformation and connecting it to your process, you're doing the work on the front end. By the time they get further down in the sales process to get on a call with you, they're sold. They're like selling you, like, they're getting on the phone with you, telling you why they have to have your process and your support. That changes everything, right? It's so, so different. It's a completely different experience in terms of how many sales you make, but it's also a completely different experience in terms of how good that feels. So either way, you're kind of going to have to put in the work to get people to understand this if you want the conversion, but it's way, way better if you're doing it on the front end to a larger group in your audience than having to have that conversation on the back end over and over and over. Does that make sense? It just truly makes things easier for you. So let's talk about how to do this. Because again, I think there are a lot of specific ways that we personally do this at A Lit Up Life, and that I help my clients do it, that I think make a big difference. But what I want to kind of say before we dive into that, because I think it's really important, is remember that this is on you to capture. I feel like so often we kind of put our clients in our minds as the responsible party for being the ones to capture these results or remember these results. And it can be really frustrating because, say we have a long container with a client, maybe we're getting to the end of a 6-month program or something like that. And then we're expecting them to remember, write to, speak to, completely have context for all the transformational results that occurred during that time. And, they might remember pieces of it, but like, as we all know, as we evolve, sometimes our brain is quick to forget some of those things, or finds it hard to acknowledge ourselves for those things. And so it's really not helpful to put it on the client to always be the one to remember and capture all of this. Ultimately, like, you're the one that wants to showcase these things. So you make sure you're capturing it yourself, which is why I'm going to tell you a lot of the ways that we do that. But I think it's just so funny how we don't talk about that a lot. Like, it really does feel like it's almost like on the client, and then like, hopefully they provide us with a great testimonial that we can share the transformation of. And like, again, like, this is such a big part of your business and your sales process. So if you can like step into your power and see how much that responsibility can rest on you, it's actually great news, because you're not like hoping and praying they remember these things. You're really taking your power back on it and taking charge of it and feeling like I know I'm going to have these amazing testimonials and transformations to capture at the end of this, because I'm the one paying attention to it. It's also, side note, really, really helpful to be able to reflect that to your clients along the way. So I think it's a great tool in general, but this is on you is kind of my thing that I want to make the point of there. This part is on the business owner. Again, not that you're not going to get your clients permission or ask them how they felt about it or have them play a role in it, but being able to capture and showcase this stuff really accurately, we have to start taking responsibility for it as the CEO, instead of waiting, hoping, praying that the client is just, a great writer or something. Jess says, you mean all of my clients aren't just going to sell perfectly for me? I know, worst news ever, right? Terrible news, terrible news. Even my clients who have like crazy results, like, it's so funny because if we ask them for a testimonial really like blankly without any context, they will very infrequently focus on those. And they will much more frequently focus on like how I made them feel in coaching or how the experience was for them. Because if you think about it, like, that's where our brains go to. It's like, what can you write a testimonial on coaching with Lacey? They're like, oh, I love coaching with her. She's so wonderful. She makes me feel so understood. She's so like, that's where our brain goes. They're not like, oh yes, let me like think about this and the fact it through the lens of like, you're going to want to put this on, sales pages everywhere. Let me go back through all of my results over the last 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it just doesn't like register for us in the same way. And so I say that not to say that like, you should feel bad if you've not gotten these like insane testimonials. Like Jess said, they're not going to sell perfectly for us. What you should be really thinking about is how can we set up processes in our business that make that go way better, and that again put us in charge of that instead of putting that on the client. So the first way to do this that we do at A Lit Up Life is like actually track metrics with them over time. So you remember where they started and you can literally see that transformation. So all of my clients get a spreadsheet from me called Metrics That Make a Difference, and a reminder in every questionnaire before our sessions to fill that out, because we want to be looking at those metrics and that improvement. And then obviously I have the partnership model. So in addition to all that, we also have the tracking of monthly income. So we have eyes on so many things that are impacting our clients' results, and we can literally see them, and we can track month 1 to month 6. What was that difference? That's huge. And I think what happens is when we hear that, we go, well, sure, but it's easy for you because they're monetary. And like, that is one of the metrics we track for sure. Obviously, that is the outcome I'm working with my clients on. But we track other things too. Like, we track level of confidence they feel, how impactful they're feeling, what are their feelings of success. Like, we actually ask them to rate these things too. So we're tracking tangible and intangible aspects of the process of building a business. And so it's just really important to know that, like, it doesn't mean like, oh, if you're not a business coach, you can't track metrics. Like that's not it at all. You would just figure out what those are for you. Jordan said, is it a generic Word doc that gets sent out before each meeting? Is it a generic Word doc that gets sent out before each meeting? Oh, sorry, I said two different things there. So the actual tracking document we use is a shared Excel spreadsheet, and it's like the same throughout our whole time together, so I can see it every time. But on the questionnaire that we send out for clients before each session, there's a question that says, did you track your metrics this week? So it goes back to like one core document, but we just have a prompt that reminds them of that. Yeah. Does anyone have templates to use? I tried to do this one time and clients just weren't filling them out. Yeah, Jordan, I mean, we just have a template, but that reminder helps them fill that out. And then also like referencing that and like getting them excited about that. Thank you, Paige. Alessia says that's a great idea with metrics. What are some tangible metrics you track apart from money? So other tangible ones would be like list growth, social growth, sales, connections, conversions, things like that. So, you know, there are a lot of other things that point to what's happening in the business. Like, for example, say one of my clients is really in like an audience building season as opposed to like a big selling season. So we want to capture like, what does that audience growth look like? Or like they might be in a sales season and not an audience building season. So we want to capture that too. So kind of having eyes on all of it is really helpful. Okay, good. No problem. Julia says, I love how you help them track the metrics that are more mindset related, because so often we just want the tangible ones like revenue, expenses, leads, etc. Exactly. I think it's really like when I think about what do I want my clients to get out of this, it's tangible and intangible. Like that's why I want them to feel impactful. I want them to not just have success, but have it feel like success. I want them to feel like they're confident in the work they're doing and all of that. So we look at those things just as much too. But, you know, to be able to say someone came to me and their confidence was at a 1 in the first month, and then they rated it on a scale of 1 to 10, a 10 in the last month, like that shows some major transformation too. Like that's pretty great. You know what I mean? Really trying to think what metrics I would want as a marriage coach. It's getting my brain turning totally. And Lindsay, some of those might be generic ones, like, you know, how connected are you feeling to your spouse or things like that. But you also might pick more specific ones for each client too, if they had different goals. So it doesn't mean like they can't change. It's just being able to show the transformation. So, you know, if client goals were slightly different, your spreadsheet for each client might be slightly different, but you're still going to be able to say like, you know, she came to me wanting to be more connected to her spouse in month 1. It was a 1. In month 10, it's a 10. Like that's still helpful, even if that's not the exact same goal every other person has, if that makes sense. So like you can adjust them too. We typically use pretty much the same ones. I very rarely make big adjustments there, but I have, and I would if it was really applicable for sure. Oh, I love that. And then Julia gave you some tangible ones too, like dates, walks together. Did you make each other laugh? I love it. So good. And again, it's easy to get caught up in thinking that money is the only metric there, but like, I promise you, all of this is something we can look at and track. So the other thing that we do aside from that client spreadsheet that they have is that we also track client wins along the way. So each time a client shares a win with me, I will put it in a separate spreadsheet I have that is just client wins, and it will be connected to that client. Or if I take a screenshot of something that they said, like, obviously I'm sharing those anonymously, but in my world, like behind the scenes and for Lacey, it would say like, you know, if it was Lindsay, it would be like, Lindsay, you know, got 3 new clients this week on February 28th or something like that, right? And so what's really cool about that is because we keep track of that, we get to reflect that to clients too. So, you know, at the end of a season together, or even if we're renewing, but we are, grabbing a testimonial, we can go to them and say, hey, these are whatever 13 wins we've accounted for, tracked for you. Like, do you feel comfortable including those in your testimonial, or some of these in your testimonial, or whatever, right? So it's really, really helpful for us to take charge of that, again, because the likelihood that I remember 4 months from now that the week of February 28th, Lindsay got 3 clients is so slim. The likelihood that Lindsay even remembers that is so slim. Do you know what I mean? And so being able to capture that and then refer back to that is so helpful. It's also just this really separate side thing that just helps me to, celebrate clients too. If like, maybe they're having a hard week, like sometimes I'll go in there and be like, have you seen all of this? Or like one of my clients, I gave her the homework of like, writing down for her content person a list of all of her recent wins. She was like, I'm so stumped. And I was like, I got you. I like copied her thing from the spreadsheet and shared it with her. Right. So that's really helpful too, because again, it makes it so much easier at the end, but it's so useful along the way too, because even if it seems like a really, really big win, like I have that with my clients a lot, like how I struggled earlier where I was like, a client that made 1.6 after how many years working together? I don't, 2.5, like our brains just forget that. Like, even if it seems huge, we're just not going to have that recall there, especially if we have multiple clients. And then you get into weird territory too, where it's like, you don't want to be not truthful because you're just trying to like, be like, well, I think there was one week where I feel like she made a lot of money. Oh, what was that again? Like you really want to feel like it was an actual clear result and metric at that time. So again, this is extra work, but this is on us as business owners. But can you imagine how much your business and sales and marketing might change if you had that client spreadsheet where you were able to see all of that in an instant and use it? Probably a lot, right? So glad you love it, Linz. Thank you, Katie. Yeah, probably a lot is the answer. So make sure you're tracking those along the way. And then we also do client case studies, right? So we do this in our client files. And the reason I'm able to do those so well and so accurately is because of that document, of that spreadsheet where we track client results. I can literally go back in and see that. And then I can share that transformation through the client file. And then, by the way, in the client file, we also tie it back to our process. When I write the client file, I'll write their transformation, literally. Then I will write how mindset impacted it, how strategy impacted it, how execution impacted it. So our entire client file is exactly what I'm talking about. It's the full transformation, where they started, where they came, or where they've come to now, and exactly how our process got them there. That sold, right? Does it take time to do that? Fuck yeah. I've taken a break from them recently because that took a lot of time, but I've also have like, I don't know, I think 30 of them or something. So, I was due, but like, to have 30 transformational pieces with our exact process laid out for it, that sells our one-on-one so damn easily because of that, right? But again, I had other things in place that made it easier for me to do that. Hey, Michelle, thank you for being here. Oh, good. Yeah. Julia, those examples help. That's awesome. Jess says, why have I never noticed that before? That's genius. Oh, thank you, Jess. Yeah. So that's exactly the thing, right? But you can just steal that. I mean, obviously you cannot steal mindset, strategy, and execution because again, trademark. But like, you could just be like, oh, I'm just going to use that format for my own, oh my God, case studies. There we go. I just call them client files in my head. So I'm like, what are these actually called? For my own case studies where I share a transformation, I share how our process got them there. I share a transformation, I share how our process got them there. Like, steal away, use that. Anyone can, use that and make that really simple. But gosh, imagine having even 4 of those. Like, you don't need 30. I just was on a roll. But Like imagine having even 4 of those that you could share regularly in your business. Like that would make such a difference, right? We have all of ours on our website now. And so if somebody is like really interested in hiring me and like looking around, they can even see those on our website. Like that is so impactful, you know? Jordan says, yes, I'm still figuring out how to implement this. I already have client folders and we'll add this to the mix to track for each. We do lots of number stuff already, but would love to start asking for more non-financial information and keeping a living, breathing testimonial file. Totally. And by the way, it's also really good if you're just having a bad day. Like it's impossible for me to be like having a bad day in the business and look at that spreadsheet and not just be like, none of this shit matters. Like, this is why I do what I do. This is like so important. So it's also just like a really good mindset tool. But yeah, so if you can then turn all of that into client case studies, it's amazing, but I set yourself up for success with that. It's so much harder to write a client case study if you haven't been grabbing or documenting some of that along the way. And then personally, totally up to you, but my process is they're totally anonymous, the ones I write, unless of course, like for some reason someone has given me permission for them not to be, or we've talked about it on a podcast or whatever, but I still will send it to the client first and say, hey, this is going to be totally anonymous, but like, here's what I've written, would love for your approval. Tell me if I got this right, if anything feels true or not true here. And so then like they get to put their stamp on that too. And sometimes they'll remember something that I forgot to capture. They'll have something extra to add about why the process helped them so much or whatever, but it's really cool for them to read that as well. I mean, to see their own transformation laid out like that is obviously super impactful too, but then, they can add to it, but I'm really taking on the lion's share of it. I'm not expecting them to remember or document all of that. I'm doing all of that. And then they're just giving their approval or a piece of feedback here or there. And that's really important. So again, remember, this is on us as business owners. Okay, so then the last thing I want to talk about that we do in terms of our actual testimonials, not our client files, but like, actually getting a testimonial, is we actually do it through questions. So we send an email to our clients with specific questions when we want to gather a testimonial. And we ask them to answer the questions, and then we put it together as a testimonial and then send it back to them for edits and approval. So for a few reasons. One is, again, most people do not just write a killer testimonial for a variety of reasons. They forget the results. They feel like maybe they're not good enough. They're way too focused on like the intangible stuff. They're maybe like just wanting to say how great you are. Like, again, I appreciate a testimonial that's like, Lucy's great, but it's not really the point, right? And also, it falls to the bottom of a lot of people's priority list, even if they're like your best client ever and love you. It's just non-urgent. And so the easier we can make it for them, the faster it gets done. And so we'll ask questions like, where were you at the beginning of this process, right? What were your tangible results? What were your non-tangible results? Like, we get really specific there so that it's easy for them to be able to answer them really quickly, speak to the points that we want them to speak to that really show the transformation and demonstrate both tangible and intangible results. And then we make it really easy by putting it together, getting their approval, right? So ultimately, way easier for them, but way better for us because we're actually ensuring that we're getting more of the testimonials that we want, as opposed to testimonials that maybe make my ego feel good or make me feel happy, but don't necessarily translate to the thing that would be most impactful in our sales process to share. So remember that too, like you get to figure out how to get the information you want there. And then also when we're sending those, because we have that spreadsheet, we can say to clients, share with us some tangible results like XXX, right? Cool. We might give them examples of that. And then they're like, oh yeah, I did have that 100K launch. Oh, fuck yeah, I did. Like whatever, have that insane month. Like, so they're like getting jazzed about that because we have those written down to help them remember. So that's really helpful too. So we know those are probably going to make it into the testimonial because they're excited about them. We're mentioning them, that kind of thing. Again, it's so easy to forget those for ourselves. So yeah, is it more work? Maybe, I suppose so, in the sense that like, obviously, you know, we have to turn the questions into a testimonial, but I actually think it's so much less in the sense that we're just getting what we want right up front, as opposed to it being like this whole thing that we have to like go back and ask them more about, struggle through, whatever, or just not getting the testimonials we want and then having to work so much harder on our sales process. So really, really valuable there. Trying to think of what else we do. I think that's most of it in terms of what we do that like really helps us capture all of that. Alessi says, such a huge conversation to track all these results and create case studies from them. I'm already thinking about how to implement that. So good. Yes. And also this is really helpful, not just on the front end of your sales process, but potentially on the back end. So this is just an example I'm thinking of, but I have a client file of a client who had a really big pivot in her business and had really incredible results from that. And I remember talking to somebody and then saying like, yeah, I just like want to pivot my whole business and I just like don't see how I could get the results I want in the amount of time I want it. And I was able to then go grab that client file and send it to them and be like, hey, just FYI, like here's an example of how that's possible. Here's how we've done it with one client. Just want to give you that. And so it really helps you overcome some of those objections too. And it's like this living, breathing thing in your business you get to use over and over. It's not like something that just sits, you know, on your website once, but it's something you can really actively use a lot in your own sales process. For us, even, you know, like I said, we have like, I think about 30 or something like that client files, and we share them week over week in our emails. Like nobody cares that they're one they read, because if there's 30, I mean, they're maybe getting shared less than twice a year. Right. So it still feels like really helpful and exciting. And obviously at some point I'll write more, but that is not the season I'm in. I can tell you that for sure. But the point is those live on in our business and we use them for lots of things. Again, we keep them on the website. We send them in emails. We send them in the sales process, all of that. Right. Yes, I also ask questions and turn them so much easier. Yep, agree. Hey, Steph. Oh man, I missed it. Gonna have to watch the replay. Yes, this is a good one. I would definitely watch it. It's like a lot of practical stuff. Shari says to join late, but we'll watch the replay. Perfect. Hey, Corey, thank you. Yeah, replay on this one, I would say for sure worth it, just so you can get a lot of the specifics in the strategy there. But ultimately, these things live on in our business. We use a lot, just like you can see that client spreadsheet I talked about serves so many purposes in our business. Those client files serve so many purposes, and we use them so much. The ability to share transformation, I think, is what has created the business that we have. Like, I really think that that's why we have a wait list of like, gosh, at this point, I think we're at 500 or maybe give or take, but like 500 people because of that, because that's what we're showcasing, because people can see like an entire client's journey. People can see clients staying for a long time. They can see the transformation that's created. It's not just, you know, I can help you with this one little piece, or if you're already here, I can take you here. They're seeing these huge transformations occur. And the more I talk about, share that, and showcase that, the more I tie that to my process, the more interest there is there. It's kind of that simple. So, you know, again, this is going to look different in different businesses, but don't trick yourself into thinking that your business isn't one that can do this. Every business is one that can do this. Your questions, your metrics might be different than mine. Your way of looking at it might be different than mine, but ultimately, like, so doable, whether you're a marriage coach, like Lindsay was saying, or a business coach or whatever. Like, being able to showcase the transformation and tie it to your process, available to all. This is one of the best I've seen, super powerful. Thank you, Molly. One could easily double their sales with half the effort by creating a framework, sharing it, and setting up a system for tracking wins and getting those specific testimonials to your sales page, webinar, social posts. Totally. Yeah. I think like ultimately make all of this work for you. Don't have to do this individually with every person, but have a process that you're doing that with to showcase this continuously. So don't just wait till a sales call to try to talk someone through a client transformation to get them sold. Make sure they've seen that client transformation before, or have one you can send them after. But it really does make this much more widespread, and it makes you able to use it more for like things like program launches and stuff like that, as opposed to even just like we're having a one-on-one sales conversation. But, you know, say I launched a program tomorrow, I could go back to all of these resources I just talked about and use all of them in that launch on a broad scale, and it would work, you know, so much better than me having to talk each person through it on like a sales call. Ideally, what this helps you do, which is what I was saying earlier, is have people coming to your sales calls being like, I've seen so-and-so's transformation and I know I need mindset, strategy, and execution, and I want to work with you. Like, that's when shit gets easy. So hopefully this helps. I promise this can be a game changer. Remember, if you comment today, you're entered to win the Biz Bundle. I'll announce that tomorrow. And if y'all have any questions, of course, feel free to let me know. If you're watching the replay, happy to jump back in and answer those. So hope that you all have a beautiful week. Hope that you start tracking this stuff. Hope that you start using it more in your business. I think it will make a huge, huge difference. And I really, really appreciate y'all being here. Bye, guys.